afternoon, Kalamazoo. Good afternoon to you, who's ever viewing this. My name is Angela Logan, and I am coming from the Recovery Institute Fair. We are Public Media Network, and we are down here today capturing recovery stories. I am sitting here with Mr. James, and he's going to share some things with us today.
My name is Jamar James.
It's so good to see you, Mr. James. Thank you so much for stopping by our booth and wanting to share your recovery story. Let's start out by you just telling me something a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a Kalamazoo native. I was born here in Kalamazoo in 1981. My mother was 17 years old when she had me. My dad was 19. We lived on the east side of Kalamazoo on Highland Street.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I was young then, we ended up moving to the south side where more of my life and history developed. I come from a parent who was addicted to crack cocaine. My father spent over 20 years in prison, and he had a heroin addiction. Good today that they both are in recovery and they're recovery coaches. But life growing up for me was interesting. I grew up around other kids who had parents who were going through life issues and struggling. We bonded together because of those things, and I grew up, I was a juvenile delinquent, got in a lot of trouble. Like hurt people in a sense. So I've been through quite a bit, growing up, I've experienced being touched. I've experienced molestation. I didn't know how that would affect my life then. I just knew that like a lot of the emotions that I had, I always tried to bury. So I was one of those kids that was very explosive, meaning you sit me off, I'm exploding. But it may not be about what the situation is. It's just I have a whole bunch that I wanted to release. So I ran with a crowd of what they would call misfits, but we were just kids who were just going through shit, and we didn't really have any real life direction. Neither were we having people in our lives that were positive mentors. It was more of people just living the life the way that life was. And that would be called the hood or the ghetto or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Growing up in the 80s, a lot of times the person who was the most influential was the drug dealer, because they had what you wanted. They had the nice cars, the sounds, the girls. They had the cash on hand. I never really got too much involved in that, and that's because of my mother. I was like, I can't sell poison to, somebody else when I'm mad about motherfuckers selling poison to my mom, and my mother, I love my mother very much. She's a very good woman. She's been through a lot. I remember around the age of 8 when I almost lost my mother to violence. She was hit in the head with a 2x4. Her head was split wide open. She lost one of her teeth, but through the grace of God, a woman intervened and saved my mom from being hit again. And that's what saved my mother's life. My mama changed a lot then because of traumatic brain injury, but we didn't know what that was in the black community because, black people didn't go and receive mental health treatment. That was more of a white people thing. Therapy was more of a white people thing. You kept a lot of stuff in-house. CPS was a bad thing, because all they did was come in and try to take black kids. And a lot of that is true, you know what I'm saying? But also, there were formats of programming that could have helped, my mother, being 17 with no high school diploma, my mother was very ingenious in the way that she made sure that we had our needs met. Even after the traumatic brain injury, but she also had her crack addiction, which hurt me because I knew it was hurting my mom. But being a kid, I couldn't really. There's nothing I can do to control that situation. That's my mother. I love her regardless of whatever. But as a teen, I got into a lot of trouble too. In and out of the juvenile home, running away and coming back home, trying to be grown. And at the age of 18, I committed some armed robberies. Here in Kalamazoo and in the Portage area, and rightfully so, I was sentenced to prison time. I was out here clowning. I was acting the ass. Excuse my French, but that's what I was doing. But I didn't really have any real hopes or direction. I was a very depressed individual. I didn't believe that my life would be anything other than that. So it was like I walked that path and I got the results that I was seeking because I'd never seen myself being more than that. I didn't believe that I had the capacity to be more than that.
What changed? What shifted in you that made you want to change your life, want to be sober, want to live a better life for you?
Being incarcerated, going to prison did change a lot for me. It's a world inside of a world. It's a it's a difference. When you're around a whole bunch of males, like once I got there, I knew that wasn't the life that I wanted. I knew that, I had to do something different. And my first year of being incarcerated, like I got into trouble, got into fights, went to the hole. When I was transferred from Riverside, which is a quarantine orientation place when you first go through prison, I was sent to Baldwin, Michigan, to a facility called Michigan Youth Correctional Facility. And honestly, there is where I started really trying to evaluate myself and look at my life. I got my GED in 3 months, and I was just looking at myself like, why the hell didn't I do this when I was, out?
Younger, yeah, yeah.
I developed a really good work habit because I worked every day. I had to work for what I needed. My mother was out here taking care of my younger brother and sister the best way she could. I didn't have very many people that was going to just be sending me cash. I didn't have no girl to argue with on the phone like I used to see the other guys to get
Yeah.
money in. So I had to work. I worked in the kitchen while I was there. And I looked for opportunities to just try to better myself in my mind, but I knew that I needed to change. And being incarcerated was like, yeah, is this something that you want to do? And I didn't see that as a life for me either.
Right, right. How long were you? How long did you serve?
I did in total, I did over 6 years, but in the state penitentiary, I did 5 years, 11 months.
Oh, that's has to be life changing completely. So when you got out, how did you move forward? Were you involved with the Recovery Institute here? How did you tell me that story? How did it lead you to where you are now?
So when I came home, I went through the reentry program.
Okay.
So that was the opportunity that I had to get my parole. But while I was in that program, I set up my own plan on my own plans. I wrote KVCC. I wrote them, told them who I was, gave them a little background history on who I was, and they sent me information to sign up. So I did. I signed up for school. I applied for the Pell Grant. I got approved for all of that stuff before I even came home.
That's awesome.
And I came home with that intention because I was like, if I don't have anything to do, I might resort back.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And I was seeing people go home and coming back.
Right.
And I'm like, I want that opportunity. You give me that opportunity, I'm not gonna fucking fuck it up. You know what I'm saying? Excuse my French again, but I'm just not gonna mess that up. So when I came home, I already was enrolled at KVCC. I didn't know if I even liked school because I would always skip. In the middle school, I skipped. You know what I'm saying? And supposed to the high school, I only was there for a few months, and then I went to a program called Phoenix. I could have graduated, but my focus was dual. I was on this side, I had school. On the other side, I had criminal activity. Criminal activity one. But when I came home, I did a semester at KVCC, and then I passed one class and I didn't pass the other, but I ended up getting a job, and I was like, I don't know if I'm quite ready for school yet, so I put that on the back burner, and I ended up working at Burger King, and I was making some good money. You know what I'm saying? You can say whatever you want, but coming from prison and you only make $1.33 a day,
Right. That's a big difference,
I was
right?
making some good money, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I just utilized that opportunity, and I had a really good work ethic. I did the best I could to stay out of trouble, and I did. I stayed out of trouble. I didn't frequent places that, I used to frequent. I still have friends that I grew up with that I interacted with, but my interaction with them was way different. When it was time to go home, it was time to go home. When it was time to move, it was time to move, because I wasn't trying to put myself in those situations. So I worked Burger King for a while, and I was kind of looking around, and like my vision was just different. I'm like, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. Like, I don't want to be the individual that's asking you if you want to upsize your fries or put cheese on your burger. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't that individual. I appreciated the work, but I knew that's something I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. And I came to a point to where I let go of that job. I started working for a place called All Tech Plastics. And at that time, I was like drinking heavy. I was depressed still too, because I was like, how am I going to provide, or at least try to help provide for my family that I had. I had got married, what I'm saying? I had my first son, I had my 4 stepkids, what I'm saying? And I had another little dude that was, what I'm saying, gonna be on the way. So it's like, what the hell am I finna do? You know what I'm saying? To be able to try to help my family, and my wife at the time, she was doing what she needed to do for the family. But I also was looking like, she didn't have, why I got her doing all this,
Get it? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when I can do something better. But I ran into the roadblock of my felony. It's a violent felony. It's not many places that wants to, what I'm saying, work with an individual with that
Sure,
violent
sure.
felony.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up spending a year in my own home. I incarcerated myself because I started having thoughts of criminal acts. Like, how can I go get this money? Well, I know how to get the money. You know what I'm saying? But what is that going to lead to? So I ended up incarcerating myself.
Wow. Where do you think that where do you think that drive and that determination came from, that discipline came from to make you say, hey, I need to lock myself down before I do something really crazy? Where do you think that came from?
It came from me being incarcerated. I didn't want to go back. Like, I didn't want to go back. I promised myself I didn't want to go back. When I was incarcerated, I went in a program called Assault of Offenders, which helped me come to terms with the fact that hurt people hurt people. That was the best message I got from it. Like, these are the things that you've been through and the things that you've experienced and the things that you saw, which cause for you to be able to do these acts. Even when I knew it was wrong, I still was able to do it. And it's because hurt people hurt people. You know what I'm saying? Like, in that state, I was making very bad decisions, even against my own knowledge of knowing like this is wrong. So I didn't want to go back. I knew I didn't want to commit the crimes that, what I'm saying, I was going to do, because, like, I'm having those criminal thoughts where it's like, I don't want to sell the drugs, but I can rob the people who do. You know what I'm saying? And that's not a good look. You know what I'm saying? Not for a person who doesn't want to be locked up anymore. So I incarcerated myself in my own home for over a year. Like, my stomach was messed up. I was very over depressed. Couldn't figure out why I couldn't even eat. And it came to a head like around 2007, when Barack Obama was running for president. Uh, I was sitting in the home, with my son, and I'm chilling with him. I'm potty training him. Now, granted, I couldn't even go to the door of my house without shaking. Like, friends would come and be like, come on, come out, come on, come hang out. And I did not want to be out. But I was sitting there with my son and I'm trying to potty train him. And because I was asleep, my wife had went to work. And when I woke up, I had pamper juice and all that shit all over me. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, man, this is a bug. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, So I'm like, man, I done cleaned up the mess, but I'm like, we finna sit on this pot. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of whooping you, you finna be on this pot. So he's sitting there and he looking at me and I'm just like, yeah. So he gets up and he sits on it backwards. And I'm like, dude, hey, nah, man, like, man, I just cleaned up. Like, nah, you got to turn around. So I turn him around. He gets up and does it again. I turn him around. Now he laughing. I'm frustrated because he feel like it's a game.
It's a
Now it's
game,
like,
sure,
wee, boom,
sure.
dad turning me around, wee.
Yeah.
And I just look, I'm like, this boy playing games. And I just had to start laughing. And I don't know what it was about that was like, I can't have my son see me like this.
Wow, that is awesome.
Like, stuck in the house, getting
Yeah,
high,
yeah.
scared to go outside, looking out the window. Like, I'm that creepy dude in the neighborhood looking out the window, want to go outside, but I can't go outside. And there was like something in that moment was like, I don't want my son to see me like this.
So that's where you came out of that. That your son was able to trigger something in it. That's awesome. So how did you move forward from there to get to where you are now?
From there, my wife was receiving services. So we had Medicaid, she was getting food stamps and stuff like that, and SSI, you know what I mean? And she did a little side work and stuff here too, under the program where it lets them work like 20 hours, you know what I'm saying, and stuff like that a week. But I ended up going and seeing a counselor, and I worked with a counselor for like a year, and that was my first stages of getting back out into, what I'm saying, the community. Yeah, yeah. My counselor, she was a good counselor. She was a white woman. Her approach was very different than any other counselor that I've ever seen. Because I think like for the first 4 visits, all she did was just listen to me. And then after that, she just started throwing stuff that I was saying back in my face. Like, you remember when you said this? And you remember when you said this? And it was like I was talking to her, but I was giving her the answers for my own issues.
Wow. She reversed
And
that.
she reversed Uno me. She reversed Uno me.
That is great.
And like from her, I ended up going to Interact. And that's when I started programming at Interact. In my mind, I was still, I'm looking for something, but I'm not quite sure. I got the confidence in counseling, but I'm looking for something. And I started in their SAM program, and I would go to the groups and I would hear complaints. And I'm like, I'm not here to hear complaints. I'm here for recovery. You know what I'm saying? So that's still the part of me that's kind of like that barrier. Like, I'm here for recovery. I ain't trying to hear this. And I would dip out and I was still going to see my counselor, but I wouldn't go back to the group. And then I would end up getting their letter, because I think it's like 6 weeks at that time. If you know what I'm saying, they send out a letter saying like they're going to have to close you out. And I was like, I get the letter and I'll go back. I did that maybe 3 times. And like that third or fourth time is when I stopped hearing complaints. I started hearing stories. And I was like, these individuals just like me, they got a story just like me. And I'm looking at this person who's struggling, but this person's struggling with addiction. But guess where they're at? They're in group and they talking about their struggle with addiction. They're talking about their relapse. They're talking about how they feel about it. They're talking about their trauma. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, these are all things that are familiar and similar because I've been through all of this. You know what I'm saying? I've been in it personally in so many ways. Whether when I was addicted to getting drinking and drinking overboard as a teenager, smoking weed, you know what I'm saying, until I was stupid, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what my mom always used to tell me. Look at you, you stupefied, you know what I'm saying? And you know what I mean? So it was like, going there to them groups, it just was another catalyst in the step to where, I was like able to really start looking at who I was as a person. And I met a guy there. His name was Patrick Forsman. He was a peer support there at that time, and I was going through the groups and I was doing good, you know what I mean? A lady named Raquel King, she was working there too. She was like one of my first counselors at Interact. And, going through that class, I was like building, and they were building me up because I was going and I was participating, and I was getting the certificates, and it was like those small steps, it's like those little cookie things. It was the things I didn't pay attention to when I was younger, but getting that certificate, it may not mean nothing to nobody else, but it meant something to me. You know what I'm saying? It meant something to me. You know what I'm saying? It built up my self-esteem and my confidence. And I remember I asked Mr. Forsman if he would be my peer, and he was like, it would kind of be a conflict of interest. You know what I'm saying? It was like I kind of felt hurt behind it, but at the same time, it was like it wasn't supposed to be. And I remember starting at Recovery Institute, like going there. I connected with Sean Harris because there was a class called Principles of Peer Support at KVCC. And I took that class, and that's how I met Sean Harris, and I got connected with the Recovery Institute. And through that class, he was hearing my story. He was like, yeah, we got a group called the Power Group, People of Wellness and Recovery. He said, you should think about joining it. So I went and looked at it, and I went to the group, found out what it was, and I actually joined the group, and they were talking about they had a peer companion job. And I'm like, this is a pathway, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, recovery is a pathway. So I applied for that peer companion job, and I didn't get it, right? And at the time, I got my job back at Burger King because I still need money coming
Yes,
in. You know
definitely.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And Sean ended up calling me, and he was like, you still looking for work? And I'm like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And he was like, well, I got a position that I think will be good for you. Would you come in? So when I went in, the job that he was offering me was the coordinator position for the Power Group.
Wow, look at there.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, you sure? Like I only went out in the community once to share my story. Like it's people, or that been here longer, way longer than me, that could be the opportunity. Like, yeah, but I think you would be good at it. Like he was like, I think you have what this group needs. So I took the job. And that was me on my way in my pathway to become state certified as a peer support specialist. Like, in my experience, the power group was great. Like I learned how to coordinate a group. I learned how to network, because I was getting us out in the community to do our presentation, share our story of recovery at Western Michigan University, Hope Community College, like all around Southwest Michigan. We were going, what I'm saying? We did stuff at KPEP. We did stuff at the high schools, Lloyd North Central, on Portage Northern, like making that coordination happen. You know what I'm saying? It was like a build up. It was a really strong build up. And I worked there for about a year. Like I did all of this coordination and stuff in like for about a year. And I ended up meeting a guy named Bob Buckowitz. And he was working for Community Mental Health at the time, Kalamazoo Community Mental Health, which is now known as ISK. And he was working over their criminology program. So he was working with the mental health recovery court. He was also doing CIT training with the police and stuff like that. And I was trying to get the power group in there to present for the individuals in the mental health recovery court. And, I kind of told him who I was and, what I'm saying, about the group. And he said, yeah. And he wanted to know more about me. And he said, well, why didn't you apply for the job that I put out? And I said, what job? Like, dude, what job is you even talking about? You know what I'm saying? And he was like, yeah, I had a job, for a peer support specialist on the mental health recovery court. Why you ain't apply? I said, I don't even know what job you talking about. He was like, well, it's closed. He said, but if you can get me, your resume by the end of the day, I'll set up an interview. And I'm like, you serious? He's like, yeah. I was like, so okay. So as soon as I got off work, I started trying to up my, resume. And, at the time, I wasn't no good resume writer, you know what I'm saying? But I did the best I could, you know what I mean? And put my information in there and I got it turned in. And he ended up interviewing me. And I got the job.
That is awesome. He saw something in you.
Yeah.
He saw something in you. So working hard to hold on to your recovery, it pays off in a big way. Yeah. That is awesome. I thank you so much for sharing all of that. That is amazing. Even from the beginning of a childhood and things that you've experienced, you still kept moving on in life. Yeah. The hiccups made you become a stronger and better person.
Yeah, and I've always felt that anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Like I did the work in the mental health recovery court. I got a chance to speak at the state capitol. I got a chance to speak in DC at the National Recidivism Conference. You know what I mean? I moved on from there and started working for Interact again on, their ACT team as a peer support. Moving on from there, back to Recovery Institute to reestablish the power group and getting my next level of running a whole group, you know what I'm saying? And became a supervisor there, and got into social work. I got my associates. I have a bachelor's. I have a master's in social work.
Gosh, that is awesome.
And I got a chance to work in the rural community, working for On Point, on the ACT team. I started out there as a peer on their housing team. Then I moved to case manager once I got my bachelor's on their ACT team, and then as a therapist once I got my master's, full circle. Now I'm back in Kalamazoo and I work for the Family Health Center, and the things that I'm looking to do next is get my PhD. I'm looking to study generational historic trauma in African Americans and how it leads to criminology. I want to prove that Maslow theory of conditioning. I want to prove that that's been happening to people who look like me since slavery. I want to show that it's actually a mental illness and a sickness that hopefully, putting more focus on it and more education towards it, getting people to acknowledge it can be helpful. You know what I mean? But I truly believe it. Like, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. You know what I mean? And a trouble team to me is nothing but a diamond in the rough. So who go help shape it?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, James. I appreciate Mr. James. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this very special recovery story. I hope that it helped you in some sort of way. I hope that it touched you in some sort of way, that you will make your next steps. Never give up. That's what it is. Persevere, keep going, determination, and you can make it. You can do it. Just like Mr. James said, if he can do it, anybody can do it. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be right back later. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
That's an awesome story.
PMN. Media for you, by you.